This is the most powerful production Audi ever built. That's right, the fully electric e-tron GT, especially in RS form, which we're looking at today, is more powerful than Audi's greatest combustion hits, everything from the RS7 and even the R8. Those of you in the know will also know that this car shares its underpinnings with the Porsche Taycan. So I bet what some of you are wondering is, are we looking at a budget Porsche here, or are we looking at something completely different? We're going to find out, but before we do, remember to check out the full written review over at carsguide.com.au. And if you're into this car, there's some news over there which I think you'll like too. Now, I do want to start with design because when I first saw pictures of the e-tron GT, well, I wasn't sold. I thought it kind of looked like a bar of soap with wheels. And it really took the kind of oval Audi shape to the extreme. But it is quite different in the flesh, and importantly, it looks nothing like its Porsche relation. Come a little closer and let's take a look. Now, up the front here, you've got this traditional Audi kind of oval shaped face, but I think they've done a fantastic job blending the elements with this kind of blacked out contrast panel and then this paint matching filler panel. So you've got the idea that it references the combustion range, but it's certainly an EV and doesn't make you doubt it at all. And if you come back here as well, these Audi light fittings here are fantastic. It just makes it seem very much like it's an Audi and nothing like that kind of swoopy, angular shape you get with the Porsche Taycan. Let's go around the side. Now, down the side, the highlight for me are these wheels. They have this odd effect where, depending on how close you are, they can look completely different. They look awesome when they're spinning as well. When you're up this close though, one of the most interesting details is they're actually partially plastic hubcaps to increase the aerodynamics. And the size of those brakes really sells the performance credentials on offer here. Now, this kind of rear angle is probably my favorite view of the e-tron GT, and I think it's the one that's least well communicated in the pictures, and that's partially because of this bumper design down here, which really lifts up and shows how wide the stance of the car is. It looks really aggressive and sporty, and it's hard to see that from the pictures. You really do need to see it in the flesh. The other cool details here are these really three-dimensional kind of light fittings, and there's an integrated spoiler in here which actually lifts up when you're going a bit faster so that you maintain really good aero. To me, the inside of this car was my second favorite part of the design after the rear. The best part is it is truly an Audi in here and not just a reskinned Porsche, which is honestly what I was expecting. Instead of the flat and almost minimalist design the Taycan has, the Audi's dash juts out with the brand's signature angular shapes and flush set screens. All the materials and switchgear feels truly Audi, as does the steering wheel, which this car shares with the e-tron SUV. In this RS model, the interior looks and feels as an Audi flagship should, but I will say there are a handful of items, particularly the seats and the dash insert, which were only sort of okay in the standard GT, that felt a bit rude for a car which costs $180,000. Speaking of, let's talk price. Now, the e-tron GT comes in just two grades, a base GT and a top spec RS, which is this one here. You'll see the prices for those on your screen now. And for those of you worried about EV value, well, Audi offers significantly more gear like for like than the Porsche Taycan range. And this car now sits where the Audi R8 used to sit, right at the top of Audi's range. Other base equipment highlights on the GT include 20-inch alloy wheels, adaptive air suspension, a fixed glass roof, LED matrix headlights, the ones which dodge oncoming traffic, a 12.8-inch digital instrument cluster, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and a 710-watt speaker system with the expected safety gear. The standard GT is slightly less powerful than the RS, although it maintains the 2-speed transmission, which is quite rare for an EV. The RS we have for this video cost nearly $250,000 before on-roads, but wears a power boost over the base car, 21-inch alloy wheels, actual Napa leather seat trim, all-wheel steering, a rear diff lock, upgraded laser light headlights, and as standard, a tungsten carbide brake package. Options we have here, which take it to nearly $280,000, include an even more hardcore ceramic brake package, alternate paint and wheel trims, and a 22 kilowatt charging inverter, letting it make the most of public slow charging locations. While value was hardly on my mind when I was checking out the spec sheet for this car, Audi claims it is better for the Taycan like for like, and it is worth noting the power and sprint times this EV is capable of, as well as the fact that it's one of the fastest charging EVs on the market. More on that later. Now, being a Grand Tourer, the e-tron GT is long and wide in this front seat here, with the main complaint just being the fact that you do have to duck down quite low to get in it because the seat is so low. That does grant it a nice aggressive seating position, and everything is electrically adjustable in here, including the steering wheel and the seat, and in this RS version, it's heated and cooled as well and comes in a nice Napa leather trim. The same can't be said for the base car. Now, in terms of storage, you've got two large cup holders here and this neat little bay that fits a phone perfectly as well. Down the side in the doors here, there are some rather useless door pockets, and there's a tiny little storage area here as well, which does actually have a wireless phone charger in it if you're paired up to the screen, which has wireless CarPlay. Now, the last thing I did notice about this car is it does have a sunroof, which you can't close. So if you leave this car outside on a hot day in Australia, it's going to be very hot on the inside, especially if you forget to preset your air conditioning using the app. Let's hop in the back seat. Now, the rear seat lays claim to this Audi's big party trick, and that's the fact that because the battery under the floor isn't a uniform skateboard design, they've left a cutout here so you can fit your feet in more easily, and that goes a long way to giving you extra room in this back seat. So it looks quite compact, but actually I've got a decent amount of room for my knees and my head as well, so pretty good all round, although again you do have to duck into it because this C-pillar here keeps it quite low. Other benefits are the fact that you get a third climate zone back here, great for rear passengers. This middle seat though is a little bit useless. Because of that battery design, Audi has had to put a whole bunch more down the center here, and it creates almost like a transmission tunnel effect like you would have in a combustion car, and just leaves that center passenger with nowhere to put their feet. In terms of storage, you also get this little drop down armrest thing with two cup holders in there, and again there's kind of useless little bins in the doors. Boot space comes in at 350 litres, which isn't huge considering the e-tron GT's footprint, and as a result, it could only hold 2 of our 3 test luggage cases. It is worth noting that the e-tron GT does score a particularly large frunk area. The e-tron GT is stupidly powerful. The punchy figures you'll see on your screen now help propel it from 0 to 100 kilometers in just 4.1 seconds for the base GT, or 3.3 seconds for the RS. Certainly enough to turn your groceries into a fine paste on the back window. Along with the Porsche Taycan, the e-tron GT is unusual amongst EVs for having a 2-speed transmission, primarily used in that sport mode as a takeoff gear, while the second gear is used for highway cruising or when the car is set to eco mode. The electric motors also allow for fully adjustable all-wheel drive to enhance handling. The RS goes a step further to include a locking rear differential and a subtle all-wheel drive system, which enhances agility at both low and high speeds. It is a system which feels like it suits a new flagship for the brand, and it's backed by an impressive battery setup too. There is just one battery in the e-tron GT range, a huge 83.7 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion unit. This grants it 540 kilometers of driving range between charges on the lenient NEDC standard, or the RS scores 504 kilometers on the same standard. The battery is also 800 volts and has an integrated water-cooled design, which helps the e-tron GT join the Taycan, Kia EV6, and Hyundai Ioniq 5 as the fastest charging EVs on the market. On a compatible DC charger, which can hit this car's 270 kilowatt peak, the e-tron GT can charge in just 23 minutes. Now, other charging specs that really set the e-tron apart are the fact that it has 2 charging bays, one on either side, so it doesn't matter where the charger is, you'll always be able to plug it in. And the other thing is, it can be equipped with a 22 kilowatt inverter, which is the fastest possible inverter on the AC or slow charging standard. And that means you can actually top this car up in around about 4 hours if you can find a compatible charging bay. Two-way charging is not a feature of the e-tron GT, something which gives the Ioniq 5 and EV6 a leg up in this flagship EV space. And despite the trim drag coefficient and assistance from the air suspension to lower the ride further in eco mode, this sports machine still has a relatively high energy consumption. See the official numbers on your screen now. We saw significantly higher again on our test day, which follows the trend of high energy consumption I also saw on the e-tron SUV. So you're probably wondering if you can actually see anything out of the e-tron GT with its kind of slinky design, and I'm pleased to report that the answer is mostly yes, especially out the front here. It's got a nice kind of like aperture for the window. It's easy to see out the side with these mirrors that come in quite close to the body. The main issue is really out the back there. It is a tiny little letterbox of a window, making it tricky to see out the back for most kind of parking or low speed situations. But with that low design comes a really low aggressive seating position, and this car really feels every little bit the sports car it claims to be. It doesn't matter how fast you're going in this car, you can stomp on the accelerator and there's a seemingly limitless amount of power to still pull from as you go. It's really quite incredible and lives up to the expectation that this car sets with its design. Aside from raw speed though, one of the best traits of the e-tron, and I think it shares this with the Porsche Taycan as well, is how it shrinks the faster you go. It ducks and darts, and particularly this RS version with its four-wheel steer, it just feels incredibly agile and nothing like the 3-ton, 5-meter long car that it is. Now I know some people hear four-wheel steer and they think, the car's going to feel a little bit odd, but it is quite a subtle effect when it comes to the tyres actually touching the road, with the strangest effect maybe coming from the steering, which no matter which drive mode you choose does have a little bit of an artificial kind of weighting to it. Steering or not though, this car really does hold on in the corners with that all-wheel drive system just adjusting how much drive is sent in any direction at any given time to make it really grab onto the road. And the weight of the batteries really helps as well. You have to drive this car at really quite absurd speeds to even get a squeal out of its tires. Now these observations do come from driving this car on a drive program around national parks, so it'll be interesting to see how it also deals with driving on the track. How will its battery and range and all-wheel drive system and those ridiculous brakes deal with that kind of pressure? That's what'll be most interesting to find out. When it comes to driving around town, that air suspension system really does keep everything under control, and the ride is pretty good despite this car having enormous wheels. There is no hiding the fact that there's not an awful lot of rubber on those wheels though, so you can get quite a bit of noise come into the cabin when you're on a coarse surface. And the ride does eventually approach its limits, so it's really good at dealing with kind of corrugations and small bumps. You'll barely notice them and the car will stay really under control. But when it comes to those larger bumps, it can really get unsettled and you can find the limit of those dampers really quickly. It really does send a shudder straight through the cabin. How is it as an EV? Well, I think that's actually perhaps this car's weakest trait. It's got a really tame regen tune, so I feel like that eats into your efficiency number a little bit, and it just feels a whole lot like a combustion car to drive, and I think some people will be really happy to hear that, although some people might think, well, I want a little bit more of the future. So how do we sum up? Well, this car really does live up to the expectation that its exterior design sells. Does it feel like a Taycan? Actually, yes it does. And that's a very good thing, and high praise for the Audi. When it comes to safety, there are no options really in the e-tron range. There are matrix LED lights with lasers, which I think are kind of unnecessary, but all the important stuff is standard, from sort of autobahn speed, auto emergency braking, and even items which manufacturers are having trouble getting at the moment, like rear cross traffic alert and blind spot monitoring. This combines with the all-wheel drive system an array of front, side and curtain airbags to make for a theoretically very safe car, although the e-tron GT is yet to be rated by either ANCAP or Euro NCAP. Audis now have a 5-year and unlimited kilometre warranty, and the e-tron GT also scores a separate and industry standard 8-year warranty for its high voltage battery. But the additional ownership perks are significant. There's a complimentary installation of a standard 7.2 kilowatt wall charger at your home, as well as a 6-year ChargeFox membership, 6 years of roadside assist, and 6 years of free servicing too. The e-tron GT needs to visit a workshop once every 2 years or 30,000 kilometres. The e-tron GT rightfully takes its spot at the top of Audi's range. It really is a harbinger of things to come, but to look and to touch and to feel, it truly is Audi all the way through. But the spirit of the Taycan lives in here too, making it a compelling option if you want a slice of what the future can offer when it comes to performance cars.